The following episode contains or may contain spoilers. So if you're spoiler sensitive, maybe beware.
Yeah, you sensitive people.
Get out.
No, get in.
Okay, Christopher Guest, let's do it.
Oh, man.
All right. Welcome to the Phantom Zone, 3 fans, 1 podcast, and a sea of comics. I'm Noah.
Kayla.
An old Jared.
Old is the correct word.
Mean.
Today is a very special fan pick Patreon episode brought to you by Derek. And so I loved that when they said the episode that they wanted it to be called Bang Bang Bangles. And I love alliteration. So thank you so much for that.
Well, I thought I came up with this episode, but I didn't. I'm excited that it's a Patreon episode. I think it's just a good idea. So I was like, that must be my idea.
Yeah, it was, I mean, as we've said before, we have this huge list of episode ideas that we want to do, and it was not on there. So it's super great that it was on there. This is probably going to be a 2-parter because we're just focusing on DC artifacts, items, objects, doodads, thingamabobs.
There's that many. There's that many artifacts. We had to cut it up.
Yeah. But yeah, it's very simple to understand what this episode is about.
If you hold it in your hand, you put it around your waist, or you stick it up your butt, this is the episode for you.
Well, the latter is probably not what we're going to be talking about, but it's okay.
Wait till we get to my spotlight.
I know what your spotlight is, and that'd be weird if that was mentioned.
Well, we'll see.
Okay, so to start off, I think in DC, the ones that come to my mind when I think of objects or
The invisible
items,
jet.
whatever, that is a good one. Yeah,
I feel like that's a different episode though, because I was like, because vehicles, that's its own thing. That's it's a whole world of
It could literally just be which 7,000 of the Batmobiles we're talking about.
we could do an episode of just Batmobiles, but also there's all kinds of cool stuff like chariots pulled by goats. Okay.
Oh, does a cosmic treadmill count?
I don't think that's a vehicle. As a matter of fact, that's the opposite of a vehicle.
But
it's literally not going anywhere. Yeah.
No, but it technically does because it travels through the Speed Force, and that's how he doesn't get lost in it.
But it's a treadmill, so it's like the inverse, because like a normal thing is you sit and it goes, but in this case, you don't sit, you walk and it doesn't go.
You run, but it's fine.
Yeah, well, you run.
I wish I ran as fast as him. Mm-hmm. But another one that really comes to our mind is the rings of the lanterns.
That's it. That's like the DC weapon. If you have to like name at least I think so. It's the Green Lantern rings, and then the millions of derivations of different colors and status eye and all that kind of stuff.
Emotions, spectrum, whatever you want to call it.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we've said this before, but if I was to have a ring, obviously it'd be Red Lantern. I can't get away from that. But like, what was yours again, Kayla? What would you be in?
Well, I think mine was compassion or something like that, to that effect.
Mm-hmm. I can see
Me too. Here's the thing.
You said you'd be rage.
No, there's
no. I would be rage.
Oh yeah. You would be rage or fear.
Me?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just banking this on what you like. I'm not like
fear and rage.
Not the emotions. I mean, the characters in the comics, but also the feelings.
I mean, it's true. I'm not going to go. I mean, also a Black Lantern. Who wouldn't want to be the Dominion over, Necron and death itself? So.
But you're not even yourself anymore. It's like the ring is just wearing you. No. Yeah, you're just a zombie.
It's fine.
Yeah,
it's really cool because those rings not only function as like you are a Green Lantern or a Blue Lantern, whatever, because of the rings, but it's also the thing they use for their powers. It's the driving force for the actual story. So, I mean, there wouldn't be a Green Lantern comic without that object.
And not to be like negative about it, but it's the whole shebang, right? It's their whole power. Like, and we're going to see as we talk, like there's some items and weapons or whatever that take like a really powerful character and just give them another powerful thing. But in this case, the artifact really makes the man or woman person. Makes the person.
There you go. Or neither or neither. Yeah, you got it.
Non-binary figure.
You know, the beauty of this episode, though, is that the accessories don't have to be magical. Like, I think that the Batarang is more iconic than even the Green Lantern ring. And it has no inherent magical properties. It's just like a symbol. It's just an item that is very attached to the character that you think of as synonymous with the character. And it's just an ordinary piece of metal in the shape of a bat.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, I think the issue for me about the Batarang is it's sort of like the real thing is Batman's ability to throw shit.
His master of physics.
Yes, because like in my hands, the Batarang is like literally. I think I have a Batarang around here somewhere, and I don't feel like it could help me fight crime. I feel like it could help me get shot.
Yeah, that's probably true. But I mean, I have a feeling that Batman really is skilled in only throwing bat-shaped objects. So
what about the? No, you're right. Correct. Yeah. That's absolutely true.
I can't think of anything else he throws.
No, it would be funny if he had one thing he threw that was in the shape of a hippo. It's like it's just more aerodynamic when it's like a hippo.
Yeah, but I mean, so that's a good point. I mean, even talking about weapons. I mean, what's Wonder Woman without her lasso?
Golden Perfect. Isn't that the best name for anything that's ever been?
Yeah, I think so. That's my new nickname, guys. I'm taking it.
There's so many cool things about that thing because it's got like 9 features. Like it's unbreakable, right? And honestly, coming like as a Thor fan, right? Like this shit breaks all the time. It's supposed to be unbreakable. Every third issue, somebody's like cracking it in half or whatever. Thor's like breaking walnuts with it. But I really don't think the Golden Perfect has been like torn asunder yet.
I don't think so either. I mean, yeah.
Well, let's go comb through the 70 years of comic book history just to be sure. Guys. So
yeah.
Pause the podcast here, and when we come back, we will have read every Wonder Woman comic just to fact check ourselves.
we wouldn't have to because BuzzFeed would have like the 13 times that Wonder Woman bracelets were broken or whatever. Yeah.
So the cool thing about objects and talking about them and really researching this type of stuff is that, I mean, not to keep talking about Wonder Woman, but even currently in her stories, they use it very much as another way to tell a story about the character. So when it was, in current continuity, when her bracers got taken off, that actually unleashed her full potential of her powers. So the whole time they were on there to suppress her powers, which I guess kind of makes sense because she always had them and they put them on her when she started developing powers. So, I mean... Yeah. It's always cool to see that kind of thing.
I also think it's cool that the lasso is one of those things where it's like kind of a little sexist maybe because it's like with that whole bondage thing, like her beginnings, and it's sort of like it's a little less aggressive weapon, but it's like she took that and then she like used it in a pretty cool way. She went from like this could have inherently, look, if we were all like, we got to go fight aliens or whatever, and there was a bunch of weapons, like a knife, a gun, and a battle axe, and a lasso. None of us are picking the lasso, okay? But
or bringing any of those weapons to an alien fight.
It's all we had, okay?
Yeah, I mean, we can also not mention the submission, the truth, the thing that the lasso does. So it's also another factor with these type of items. I feel like though, like in comics, it gets interesting that. So the items can be a plot device. The items can be something that drives the story, makes the hero who they are. But then sometimes they add a little too much into these type of things because it's like, oh, the lasso's the lasso and she can use it to make people tell the truth. But, oh, it's also unbreakable. But, oh, it's also from this. And it's like, okay.
You're saying it's almost like too busy?
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like it could get too busy and then it runs into that annoying thing sometimes when it's like, well, she did this for like 10 years. Why can't she do this now? even though she still has the same thing. So it always gets
I feel like if the items are around as long as the characters are, they're going to have the same problems in continuity that some of the characters are. Because like when we do deep dives, for example, you'll list all these abilities that a character has, and then sometimes we haven't seen some of those abilities in like 20 years. It was like during the 80s or the 90s heyday, and then like a new writer was like, no, I'm not gonna touch that. So I feel like items aren't, especially if they're intrinsically tied to the character and they've been around for as long or as like as a part of that character, they kind of fall prey to the same kind of like trappings of the new writer is like, nah, this lasso is only telling the truth. I'm gonna have like Aquaman cut it in half with his trident, you know?
Right.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I was thinking about continuity the other day and like actually mentioned this Moon Knight podcast, Into the Night, that I was on, where it's like a lot of people think continuity is a problem of like they don't recognize stuff that already happened. But continuity can be a problem going forward. If you're a writer and you put some outlandish shit out there that is just such a departure from the character, you're also disrupting continuity because no one after you is going to follow it. So if all of a sudden like the lasso has the ability to like wrap around the earth because I just want to have that fun moment, no one going forward is going to like listen to it. They're just going to be like, okay, well, that never happened. Brian, Michael, Bendis, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so I think we've touched on a lot of like weapons already. But then there's like also the like locations that are also objects. So one that I've always been fascinated with is like the Lazarus pit. I mean, like that one I would consider is like an item, an object, or like a doodad in a way because they use it as that, like as in its function.
Is it like a swimming pool, an object? I think so. I would say it's a big one, but it's hard to hold. But it's you can put it in a room. It's an object.
Yeah, and with those, I feel like objects or whatever like that is always interesting because it always exists, but it only gets featured when it can be used for a story. So it's not like weapons or, utility belts or anything like that the hero usually just carries around, but it's more of like, oh, that Robin that everybody voted to kill, like let's throw him in this Lazarus pit and then let's see what happens with that. So like,
yeah, it's cool though. It's also one of those things that sort of exemplifies a character trait in the character it's associated with. Because like Ra's al Ghul, right? Like he's this almost like timeless or out of time sort of character. So it's like
literally,
the Lazarus pit gets to be not just the mode by which he does it, but it kind of represents that concept. I was going to throw another one out there. I can't speak. The Trident of Neptune. I like that because it's like it says this is Aquaman's trident for the most part. He's had a bunch of them, but like this
sounds like it's Neptune's trident to me.
Yeah, I forgot that's in Atlantean as Noah speaks fluently. You want to put the adjective in front of the noun. I'm sorry, I apologize. But it's very regal. It also says like I'm in the sea. You know what I mean? He could have a sword. He has had a sword a couple of times.
He pretty much had one attached to his hand for a while.
Yeah,
and it was like a hook, but it was like a sword hook.
Yes, thing. And that's another example to circle back what we're talking about. They've tried to give that thing 1,000 abilities, try to spice it up. It never sticks, or if it does, he doesn't use it like consistently enough to sort of go with or whatever. So for the most part, it's just like this unbreakable trident or whatever.
Like I wouldn't mind if they made things make sense with it, like. If he could do like low level aquakinesis with it, which he has done, that's fine. Like it makes sense. It's the fucking king of the seas fork. Like why wouldn't it be able to do that?
Fork. It's not a bad idea. I think the problem is like when you have characters that are like 80 years old, it's just a bit late to start adding abilities and powers. You can do some stories that way. I never have a problem with temporary shit. Like if they're like, we want to see, he has the ability to like communicate with gophers, like because sometimes gophers get wet or whatever.
What?
It's like okay, yeah, but it's not gonna stick. I mean, like it's not even like a moral point. Like they shouldn't do this. It's just it won't work. They're always gonna go back to that kind of like core character or whatever. I think.
So if you guys like, out of the types of objects or items or whatever in comics, do you typically tend to like ones kind of like what Kayla was saying that are not magical in nature, more based in somebody that engineered it, or magic in nature, or typically?
I feel like I have like two answers for this. So for
Noah's asking, do you like fantasy more or sci-fi?
Pretty much.
I like items that are kind of intrinsic to the character that will be there when you pick up that book. So, to use Wonder Woman's lasso again, you pick up an issue of Wonder Woman and you're never like, I wonder if she's going to have to find the lasso or blah, blah, blah. Like she's always going to have it. But for like big events, for crossovers, I kind of like the items, and I don't know if it fits really into one of your categories, but like it's going to be like the equivalent of the mother boxes, the infinity stones, that type of stuff, where it's just like arcane and mysterious, but like OP overpowered. And they're like, we don't know how to wield this. We don't want to touch it. We just have to make sure the bad guys don't have it. Oh shit, the bad guys have it. Unlimited power. So I feel like those are kind of compelling and mysterious in terms of like big events. But most of the time I'm just like, I want to see Thor with Mjolnir. That's it.
Is meow.
Meow, meow. Meow, meow.
So that brings up a pretty good point, though, because items like that, when they're done right, so like the Infinity Stones, the Anti-Monitor Tower, or whatever you want to call it, they can be kind of MacGuffins, or just plot devices, whatever you want to call it. But if they're done right, they're really good, and I really feel like it's how rare they are in the comics, and if the stakes with them are like high enough.
I know this is using like cinematic examples and it brings in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it's kind of like the difference between how they use the mother boxes in the Justice League movie versus how they use the Tesseract in the Avengers movie.
Right.
In terms of like a bad or a good example.
Right.
Away from whether it was good in the movie, the difference, I thought it was weird that the mother boxes are these like, it just felt like they were ripping off Marvel in this way, which is like they try to make them the MacGuffin level thing. In the comic books, they're like the apocalyptic version of an iPad.
Right.
Like everybody has them. They're everywhere. It's not that they're not very powerful. They are, but they're just like really common. It's like basically the New God computer interface.
Right. It opens boom tubes. I mean, come on. Like,
and communicates with everything, and it controls energy. It's like this walking, like, what's the expression? Like, not phlogiston. It's like it's a plot device, essentially. It's just whatever you need it to do, it gonna do. But I'm glad you guys mentioned it, because it is like just this like object that you have to associate with the DC universe. Yeah. I mean, because it's not just in Apocalypse or New Genesis, there's like 40 of them on Earth that differ. Like Cyborg's got one, I think, in his armpits or whatever. It's just like everywhere.
He's like a child of the mother box, if you want to call that. But what about you, Jared? As far as like, do you typically like mystical ones or sci-fi ones, or?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I like magic better than high tech stuff as an aesthetic, and from a writing standpoint, I think I like it better because you don't need to explain the mechanics, or worse yet, pretend that you're explaining the mechanics. Sometimes I hate super science. It's very much that Arthur C. Clarke thing where, it's like sufficiently advanced technology will appear magical. It's like, well, if that's the case, let's just get straight to the magic.
Jared only thinks scientists or nuclear physicists should be able to write sci-fi. Is that what you're saying?
No, I just get annoyed when they don't. Like, Isaac Asimov was good. He knew about science. Like Mark Millar doesn't.
Well, I mean, I think it could go both ways. Like, I mean, you have what Jared's saying. It's like sometimes when they try to like over explain the science, it's like, in comic books, we don't really need that. We're not trying to learn science, know, like I'm perfectly fine.
I refuse.
Yeah.
Why is the jet invisible? Why? It's not something we really think about.
Right. And it's like, I'm fine with knowing that this guy that's the fastest man alive can run on a treadmill and go through time. Like, don't tell me the physics behind it. Yeah. I mean, I think I lean more towards the sci-fi stuff that I typically like. Of course, I love a good magical object, but I like more like spellcasters than like the objects they use.
Totally.
And then also, just to make it, be kind of dumb and pick both of them, Wizard's Wand. I mean, it looks like magic, but it's also technology. So,
yeah, there's a bunch that like I don't even think I know. Like, so the Green Lantern rings, not to just keep coming back to those, but like, what is it again? Like, it gets in that cosmic territory where who knows?
Yeah, I think it's just that line between like magic and science. It's like a natural material, but it also, I don't know. Who knows? Listeners, if you know, just let us know what Ganthet made them out of or whatever.
Yeah, because they have like that power inside of them, right?
Yeah.
Like they're not doing spells, but it's like they harness the power with their will. They don't have like machines. And if they do, it's just like to make it easier or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I have no idea. But before we get on to our spotlights, we can't not mention the Phantom Zone projector because
our namesake.
Yes, because our namesake. I mean, obviously, if by now on the whateverth episode that you're listening to, if you haven't figured out, our name is a play on the Phantom Zone projector. So,
well, the region.
Yeah.
Noah had an idea that you could only listen to the podcast if you had a projector for the podcast, and I said no, that's dumb, Noah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go on record and say I did not say that, and Jared's lying.
We'll see who believes what. But anyway,
well, we all know who the dumb ideas come from, Jared.
Hey, fair enough. You gotta have 100 bad ideas to. Anyway,
no good idea.
Yeah. So what were we saying? No. But also before we get to the spotlights, I wanted to ask you guys because we didn't pick our spotlights on the basis of like what we would ultimately want. We picked them based on like what we thought would be interesting and deserve a spotlight. So if you guys could pick anything to have in the DC universe, but can't be your spotlight, what would it be?
The Lazarus Pit.
Hey, I was gonna say that because I want to live forever.
Too slow. I'll let you use it. So pick another one. I'll let you use it.
I like that. I like that.
Nice.
All right. Well, I'm going to use my second pick for what I almost did. And I'm going to go with Katana Soul Taker because I wanted to mention this. And also, I think it'd be a really badass aesthetic because I could just walk around with a katana going like, this is the sword of my enemy. This is the souls of my enemies. Don't cross me.
Get in my sword.
There you go.
Can I have this is like multiple stuff, but I want a rig. I want Hawkman's shit. Nth metal, baby.
Oh, no, you can only pick one. You can't pick
whole
more than
thing.
one.
They're connected, I think. For sure. Okay.
No,
God, that's hard. But fine. I just want the maze. Like, I feel like if I see like I want Hawkman's maze, it's just like DC's version of Mjolnir, which is almost like cheating.
I mean, that's what you get.
But that's
though.
what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna. No, you know what? Screw it. I'm just Green Lantern ring. I got a Green Lantern ring. I know it's obvious. I know we talked about it a lot, but it's like you get to have. Also, it's like wishing for more wishes. It's wishing for more wishes because you're like, what do you want? I want a gun. I get a green one.
You're acting like you're literally about to get this item at the end of this episode.
Hey, a guy can dream.
Well, my creepy magical object that I'm choosing is the Helm of Fate, wielded by Dr. Fate, if you didn't know that. I chose this item because it freaked me out when I saw the episode about Dr. Fate in Young Justice. And I hadn't really read Dr. Fate. My stepdad has a cool like print in our game room of Dr. Fate. I've seen his face, but that episode really freaked me out and I was intrigued. And he seems really OP, so I wanted to read about what got him that way. So a little bit of background on the Helm of Fate. It was created by the Lord of Order Naboo, along with two other mystical items, the Amulet of Anubis and the Cloak of Destiny. So really talking about the Helm of Fate is like a 3-for-1 because there are other magical objects tied to it. And the three items combined grant Dr. Fate his powers, the primary agent of the Lords of Order. So very intimidating man and item.
I mean, like that. Getting that equipment and then also being part of the Lords of Order, like you just get the coolest names with everything.
I think so too.
On top of that, being called Dr. Fate, it's like, yeah, this is great.
The aesthetic for this character is 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Lords of Order sounds like some weird like prog metal band. You know what I mean? First of all,
I think there is one.
What?
the other thing, because you're talking about that scary episode of the Justice League, this is one of those things where it's like the item, you don't have the item kind of has you kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what freaked me out in that episode. It like takes control almost of your consciousness.
Mhm.
So terrifying. You lose your will, but gain the power of fate. The
Same
helmet
thing.
of fate holds immense arcane power. Because it comes from the item, you could probably just consider it the person that wields it a sorcerer, quote unquote. According to Black Alice, it's the most powerful magical artifact the world has ever known. So, I don't, whoever follows me, it sucks to be you because I have the most powerful one.
I'm sure in continuity somewhere that's taken out.
Mhm.
One of my favorite little tidbits and stories about the Helm of Fate is that when the helmets had plenty of users in the past, including Detective Chimp, let that sit with you for a second. Black Alvis, Ebis, the Invincible, Zariel, when it finally hits Shazam, he tosses it into the universe and is like, nah, let the universe choose who's going to be the next Dr. Fate. And wouldn't you know, it comes back to Earth, as it do, and it's picked up by Kent V. Nelson, the great-nephew of the original Dr. Fate, Kent Nelson. What? I mean,
Nice.
Shazam, he threw it into the whole universe, and it came back to Earth, and it landed in the great-nephew of the person that originally wielded it. Comics. Haha.
Sounds like a shitty system.
That's like that I would assume that explanation because it's comics. It's like, of course, it would have to come back to Earth and be like some descendant of the original one.
Wouldn't it be crazy if he threw it into the universe and it just never came back?
He destroyed it. Oops.
It's very Skywalker, by the way.
Yeah.
It belongs in this family, I guess. They can resist the creepy mind control aspect of the helmet. But obviously, Nelson he has the helm, but he has to go after the amulet of Anubis, the cloak of destiny. And due to his lack of magical powers, he didn't know how to use the helmet correctly because it just fell into his lap. And,
You put it on your head.
There was a half mask version of the helm that wasn't as effective in comics at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And awful looking. The helmet reminds me of like old armor. I can't remember exactly what country. Maybe old Roman armor because of the weird V shape around the face.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't like the half helm one. It reminded me too much of like Kid Nova. Not a fan.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the Helm of Fate, Dr. Fate, and the most powerful magical artifact in the whole universe. So sucks to follow me, guys.
Luckily, I don't think we're doing magic. So
technically, mine teeters on magic.
magic teetering. My favorite kind of teetering.
Yeah, not only do I love the aesthetic of Dr. Fate's helmet, but I love what it is and what it can do, and then the stories that can follow from that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just great. Like you mentioned the Young Justice episode. That episode's super cool because Wally gets the helmet and he almost dies.
Yeah,
but he doesn't.
And instead, Katana loses her father. Woo!
Oh yeah.
No, the funny thing about that helmet too is it's like it needed in that episode. I don't know how much of this has been explored in the comics, but like how it only or best works when the host, I guess, is like magically gifted.
Yeah.
So it was like the weird, like this sorting hat was like, get me off this fucking muggle. I don't want any of this shit.
That's true.
I mean, yeah, if you want to like research a little bit about all of what the Helm of Fate can do or what Dr. Fate can do, I would have been here for an hour listing every single type of ability that it grants you. So any type of magical thing, immortality, super strength, super speed, anything, the helm can do it.
Okay, so for my item, I had to do this because I couldn't think of another time to talk about this one, but it's the Hstyle. And it's not just a comic, but it's also an object.
Noise.
Is that like the subtitle on one of the comics? It should be if it's not.
No, it was mine because I was like, it's also kind of cool that this object literally has a comic named after the object.
It makes reading recommendations a little simpler for you.
It's so true. Speaking of comics, so Hstyle first appeared in House of Mystery in 1966. So this is House of Mystery was kind of one of those comics, or it's like Journey to Mystery, where a lot of different things would happen in it. You know, sometimes things from there would get their own issues or own comics. And in this case, Hstyle was so popular, it got its own comic. And then, so the first person to have the Hstyle, his name is Robbie Reed, and he discovered it in a cavern that never explained how it got there, where it came from, who made it. He just happened to be in some random cavern and found this object. It's a handheld device. So this device, you might have seen it in comics, but it looks different every time almost. Sometimes it just looks like the rotary part to a rotary phone. Sometimes it looks like an actual phone. Sometimes it's like a phone booth.
Which, by the way, is perfect for like that level of like science at the time. It's like, what's the most advanced invention we have? The rotary phone!
Right. And to make it more comic book like, it didn't have numbers or letters like the later iterations did. The first one had these weird symbols on it.
Cool.
But somehow Robbie was able to understand them because comics, I guess. So
It was like the Jurassic Park where she's like, oh, I know this system or whatever, you know?
Yeah. So how this object works and how Robbie figures out what it is, he dials hero, hence H, dial H or whatever for hero, and he gets turned into a random superhero. Literally a random superhero. Like, cannot choose, doesn't know what's going to happen. Sometimes he'll turn into a heroine. Sometimes he'll turn into a blob. There's one that's called, I think it's like cock-a-hoop, and it's literally a rooster with the body of a hula hoop.
I'd throw that thing in a pond.
The body of a hula hoop?
Look it up. Just look it up. It's amazing.
It's like, at least it's not arm fall off boy or whatever.
I'm afraid.
Yeah, and this one, he figures out if he dials OREH backwards, it pretty much reverses him back into his normal self. It's kind of the weird thing about this object, and like we talked prior, it changes so much how the object works that it's really hard to really just tell you, like, this is how this object works. Pretty much you dial some shit on this thing and it turns you into a superhero. That's really all you have to know with this.
And that's all you need as a concept.
Right. And then enter in his villain, Daffy Dagan, which when he became his supervillain, he called himself Daffy the Great. So that's awesome. He became a supervillain by dialing villain on the H dial, and it gets better. His girlfriend, Susie Shoemaker is her last name. Cool.
Wow.
She dials heroin, and she temporarily turns into Gem Girl. So, and her story ends because she gets hit on the head and doesn't remember anything. So,
how many times do you think somebody was just like marijuana? Just to see. I just want to no. Okay.
Well, so like the interesting thing about it in its original conception that there was no knowing how long he would be that hero. Sometimes it could be a few seconds, sometimes days, hours, and then he would just like turn back. So they kind of fleshed it out towards the end. In the 80s, Robbie's initial like Hstyle was discovered by two teens, Chris King and Vicky Grant. They were in a haunted house and they found it. The dials actually looked like a watch and a necklace. So the dial can look like different objects, which makes it confusing because it's called an H dial and it doesn't reveal itself until the person that's supposed to picks it up.
I do love this style though, because I really feel like it's just such a wacky comic book. You'd only read a comic book kind of thing. I say you'd only read it in comic unless a cartoon show, of course, ripped off the idea called Ben 10. And it's fine. I don't think it's plagiarism per se, but it's definitely heavily like influenced by it. But it's a great thing because it's like, do you want a magical object that makes you be a superhero, but are you afraid to make choices? The Hstyle.
Now, to make it like more confused, not more confusing, or if you are confused by just even that weird history I told you, welcome to Silver Age comics or Golden Age comics. They made it a little less confusing in the current one, but then they introduced this whole like hero verse that apparently like all the heroes that people can turn into with the dial are actually alive and live in this like thing. I don't know. It's good though. It's really good. I don't want to give anything away because people should read it. But yeah, that's the Hstyle. I do want to put a side note though that there are other counterparts to the Hstyle, and this is where it gets even more amazing. So there's the Hstyle. It turns the user into a sidekick that matches the Hstyle hero.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah, and to make it even better is that sidekick literally has to do anything that hero says. So.
Oh, I think it's S for slavery.
There's the J dial, which makes the user be able to teleport through dimensions or whatever. There's the G dial. It grants a technological gadget to the user. So G for gadget. There's the dial tapper that copies any H dial in range. And then the Q dial, which turns the user into a villain. But the user must be bad to be able to use it.
Okay.
So
why is that written into the code?
Well, it's also written into the code of the Hstyle originally. You had to be like
pure of heart
hero. Yeah, I mean, you had to be the champion the wizard was looking for or whatever. Yeah. So.
I just love that it's like in its code. It's like, oh no, we're here to help villains too. If you really, we're here to help you reach your heroic or villainous potential.
Right.
Yeah, I'm all about that. That's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the mess of the Hstyle, but it is awesome. It's
super cool. Okay, so every once in a while when we do a spotlight on this show, I get to research a character that I don't know anything about, and then a fraction of that time, I fall in love with the character, and that's what happened this time.
Side effect of doing the podcast.
Exactly. So I did the Cosmic Staff, aka the Cosmic Rod, aka the Gravity Rod, aka not the Star Staff, which is what I want to call it, because it just would make so much sense. The Cosmic Staff is the legacy of one of DC's greatest Golden Age heroes, the Starman. So you may know from the JSA, and anyway. So, and I just want to, because I love this idea. It comes right out of the 40s. It's like so Art Deco, so like hopeful. It's before like, you know, it's like coming out of World War II where America was like, we're the best. We can do anything or whatever.
Captain America.
Yeah, exactly.
Good old Cap.
But like the idea, I just want to read this. A humble man who stole the very light from the heavens, holding such Promethean fire in his righteous grip, burning the light of justice in the darkest places. You know where I got that from?
Comics.
I wrote that. I wrote that. I was inspired. Okay. Anyway. No, but it's a really, really cool idea. So basically the way this works is this astronaut sort of inventor, vanguard character, scientist named Theodore Knight, invents this thing called the gravity rod. He calls it the gravity rod at the time. And it kind of has the concept right up top. It basically absorbs stellar energy. That's why he's called Starman. And it gives them the capacity to defy gravity, right? And also manipulate that energy. And my theory, I don't really know why it was called the gravity rod originally, but it gets, I think it's because like flight was like super important in the 40s. Like that was like the paramount power. It like meant superhero, whatever.
So simple times.
Yeah. So they're trying to emphasize that, but it's soon named the Cosmic Rod very quickly, I think, to like better exemplify its powers or what have you. So yeah, Ted like basically becomes a Starman, flies around Opal City, protecting Opal City. Yeah, I know. It's a perfect DC thing. It's got to have it. I actually had to look up what an opal is. It's a shiny white rock.
It's a really beautiful stone.
Totally. Yeah, that's what this says too. Okay, so just to give you an idea, the what will be called the Star Staff, it's like early on still called you see, I messed it up. The Cosmic Staff, which was at this time is called the Cosmic Rod. It's kind of like, if you're the uninitiated, just think like a kind of Green Lantern ring. Similar, a little bit more direct, less construct, more energy manipulation. Okay, so it gives you the ability to fly really fast, create force fields, protect you from the vacuum of space or whatever. You can do blasty stuff. You can manipulate the position of objects in space, which is like levitation. That's all that is.
What?
That seems that what's the scale on that? Like a planet? Or
No, it's very like Green Lantern level. So in other words, like it's like you can use the Star Staff and point it at like, I don't know, like a guy and move him around. It's very much like what Thanos does with the Space Stone, but just not as powerful. You know, I can like.
So it's not like, it'd be funny if I switched Jupiter and Mars's place. It's not like.
First of all, that would be very funny, but no, probably not that powerful. Because remember, this is like right
at NASA.
Yeah, exactly. This is right on that edge of like technology and magic. Because at the end of the day, this is just a thing that like an American scientist like created or whatever. So it kind of is limited by its sort of basic nature or whatever. It gets weird and semi-magical because the Star Staff gets like attuned to the person. Like they can kind of like listen to subtle mental commands and stuff like that. I'm not really sure
to know its user.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it also, because this is just a fun fact if you are trying to kill Superman, I guess, because it uses star energy and
don't give villains advice.
Well, maybe he goes evil, so I'm talking to Batman. Anyway, so it can also create red sun energy, so it can actually hurt the Man of Steel himself or whatever. But anyway, so yeah, exactly. Well, that's evil. But anyway, so just to give you a brief sense of the history. So Ted Knight creates this thing, becomes the Starman. He actually has a really like tragic, sort of dramatic story. I can't really get into it. Well, exactly, but especially for the Golden Age heroes, right?
Yeah.
And like he's in the JSA. If you know the history of the DC, he just sort of like retires into like old age or whatever, and his he passes off the Star Staff to his son David while he becomes kind of like a mild-mannered inventor. And the thing is, David immediately gets assassinated. Like immediately, like we're talking first issue assassination, shot by a sniper. And
what?
Yeah, it's bad. So we don't really get to see what David would have done with this thing. And it goes to Jack Knight. Now, Jack Knight is the Starman of the 90s. He ushered in the Starman legacy into the 90s. And the reason he's important is because the Star Staff itself takes on a bunch of major changes during this period. And this is why I love this thing. One, he actually gets this, the first one he uses is like an old version, like an old prototype. So it's really long. The Star Staff originally was like this sort of baton thing, like the Olympic torch or something like that. But then,
cute.
Yeah, it's very cute. But it's also mighty. Anyway, so yeah. And it really is very like baton, like cheerleader baton thing.
Great at parades.
Yes, exactly. But so Jack gets like the kind of longer version, and he likes it. It's like a more weapony
because he's the man.
Jack is awesome. If Jack Knight, look into the series, but he's like a junker, very reluctant hero. He doesn't want to do this. He also knows jujitsu. Anyway, so he's got this long stuff, and then his dad, the original Ted Knight, sort of like becomes his like micro, like his dude that makes stuff, because he's an inventor, and he invents a new version just for Jack, and it's long, like Jack likes. This sounds so phallic and awful, but I'm sorry.
That's why I said, because he's a man, I need a bigger staff.
Yeah. So anyway,
oh my God.
And it has a crooked neck and a like spearhead that's got like a hook on the end. It gives the Star Staff its signature look. And that's why I actually love this thing, because there's no other object you've ever seen in real life or anywhere else that you could mistake for this. It's got such a specific silhouette. And I just think that makes it like, kind of extra special.
I like how you got more excited talking about the design of it than its ability to move things in space.
We're in the audio medium, Jared. They can't see the staff.
But you can look it up. Now, there's this site. It's kind of secret. It's called Google Images. And with this site, you're going to see it. No, but it really, I mean, honestly, since comics are such a visual medium, that is kind of what I love, that you instantly know who the character is and everything like that. So Jack has the Star Staff, and during his tenure, he kind of forms the like image. That's where we get the idea. And then he retires, and they give the Star Staff to, who has it now, Stargirl. She just came out with this series on CW, and I haven't watched it because I heard it's not that good.
On DC Universe.
Sorry. I heard it wasn't that good, but I watched the action scenes on YouTube. Well, I don't know. My point is, I can't really recommend.
I will go on record and say it has its CW moments, but it's actually pretty damn good.
I watched the stuff on YouTube. It looks awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like I watched the fight scenes and stuff just to get a sense of how it was like visually represented, and it's so totally visually represented well. So Courtney Whitmore Stargirl has the Star Staff now. But anyway, so that's the Star Staff. It's really cool. And I love it. And I also want it now, but I figured I couldn't like give it away or whatever.
True. Mm-hmm. All right. Comic book recommendation time.
Yeah. This one was actually kind of hard. Dr. Fate actually has, they're normally miniseries, but he has like several runs just entitled Fate or Dr. Fate. The one I'm recommending is called The Book of Fate. Well, you know, if it has Fate in the title, you're probably pretty good. But it came out at 1997 and it's a 12-issue run. It features Jared Stevens, the inheritor of Dr. Fate's powers, and it kind of reboots because he's already an established character. It was a mini reboot. It gives him a new origin and then kind of unfortunately like decanonizes everything past in his previous series, which was just called Fate. But it's a good starting point for modern Dr. Fate interpretation.
Right. Oh, comics. So I'm going to recommend, obviously, Dial H for Hero, Volume 1, Enter the Heroverse.
Oh my God.
Everything has to have the word hero in this type of comic. But it's by Sam Humphries. It's actually really good. I love the person that has the H dial now. He also has a friend from a summer camp that's in it. And also, if you know who Snapper Carr is, you're going to want to read this. So think of Jimmy Olsen, but worse. So that's my recommendation.
I love that we're doing this video, by the way, because I can go like this. My recommendation is this. And this, it feels very Reading Rainbow right now. So my recommendation is Starman, Sins of the Father. Came out around 1994. I think this was compiled in 1996. And this is a big deal because this is before they were actually doing a lot of trades. It had to be really good. And oh my God, let me tell you that this is really good. I get excited about comics a lot, but in this case...
You do?
I do, but this is the best thing. I would say top 10 things I've read all year. I was amazed at it. I always heard it was good, which is kind of what made me want to do this thing. I'd heard it was good. This is like Grant Morrison, Animal Man level fun, awesomely written. Check it out. Sins of the Father, Starman.
Yay!
Yay!
All right, that's it, guys. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at The Phantom Zone Pod for more podcast updates.